Moi drodzy towarzysze niedoli.
My dear comrades of the horrors in the camp, distinguished guests,
Szanowni zgromadzeni,
distinguished
przyjaciele.
visitors to this place, friends.
Jestem jednym
I am
z tych
but one
żyjących,
of those who are still alive,
nielicznych, którzy
few
byli w tym miejscu
who were here in this place
niemal do ostatniej chwili
almost until the last
przed
moment
wyzwoleniem.
before the liberation.
18 stycznia
On the 18th of January,
zaczęła się moja tak zwana
my
ewakuacja.
so-called evacuation started. Evacuation from this camp, from Auschwitz, and after 6.5 days it ended.
Okazała się marszem
It turned out to be the death march for more than every other
moich współwięźniów.
co-inmates, my fellow inmates. We walked together as a column of 600 people.
Wedle wszelkiego prawdopodobieństwa
According to all probability,
nie doczekam już
I will not live to see another jubilee here.
dlatego
This is how it goes.
wybaczcie,
So please forgive me
może trochę wzruszenia,
that there will be some emotions in what I'm going to say.
a oto co chciałbym powiedzieć
Now, this is what I would like to say,
mojej córce.
to tell primarily to my daughter,
Tu jest na sali.
to my granddaughter who is here in this room, and I would like to thank her for that, to my grandson as well,
O tych, którzy są
but I'm mostly after those who are the peers of my daughter and my grandchildren, the younger generations, especially the youngest, those who are even younger than they are.
Kiedy wybucha wojna światowa, ja
When
byłem nastolatkiem.
the World War broke out, I was but a teenager. In the First World War, my father was a soldier,
I został ciężko poszkodowany.
and he was shot into his lungs,
Powtarzało.
and that kept repeating.
Dla naszej rodziny
That was a drama for our family,
moja matka
and it went on and on.
z pogranicza
My mother hailed from the Polish-Lithuanian Belarusian borderland. Armies went forth and back. They pillaged, raped,
paliły
burnt,
żeby nie zostawić,
burned villages, not to leave anything for those who were coming after them.
że ja
So you could say that I had first-hand experience of war.
ale mimo wszystko, chociaż
Nonetheless,
tylko
even though
25 lat,
it was only 20, 25 years apart, those times seemed so distant, like those Polish 19th century uprisings, like the French Revolution,
a to było tylko 20 lat.
and that was only 20 years away.
Więc kiedy dzisiaj
So
spotykam się z
when today I meet young people, I perfectly well realize that after 75, if not 80 years,
wydaje się im troszeczkę
people
nudzić. Są troszkę
get somewhat bored.
tematem.
They
Wojna i niewolą,
find war, Shoah, Holocaust somewhat of a boring subject, just like genocide.
rozumiem.
And I actually understand them.
Dlatego obiecuję wam,
That is why I promise to you,
opowiadał wam
the young,
o moim cierpieniu,
that I'm not telling you about my suffering.
o moich przeżyciach.
I'm not telling you about what I experienced, my 2 death marches,
Kończyłem wojnę
how I finished the war
32 kilo
weighing 32 kilo,
na skraju
really on the verge of life,
czerpania. Nie będę opowiadał o czymś
utterly exhausted. I'm not telling the things that were worst, the worst, the tragedy of the farewells, of parting with the near and dear, when after the selection you see and you sense their
Nie
fate.
będę o tym mówił.
No, I'm not telling you about that.
Mojej córce,
What I would like to pass to my daughter, to my grandchildren, and to their generations, I would like to tell you something about you yourselves.
Widzę, że jest między nami
I see we have among us the President of Austria,
van der Bellen.
Mr. Alexander van der Bellen.
Panie prezydencie,
Do you remember, Mr. President,
mnie
when you
i kierownictwo
hosted me and the management of the International Auschwitz Committee? We discussed those days.
Pan użył takiego
You
słowa.
used such a phrase,
Auschwitz ist nicht vom Himmel gefallen.
Auschwitz ist nicht vom Himmel gefallen. Auschwitz did not fall down from the skies.
Jak to się u nas mówi,
You could say,
to oczywistość.
that's an obvious thing. Absolutely obvious. It did not.
Może się to nawet wydawać
This may even seem a hackneyed phrase, quite commonplace perhaps,
jest to
yet
niesłychanie głęboki
this is a profound
skrót myślowy. Moi drodzy,
shortcut in our thinking,
na chwilę
and it helps to understand certain things.
wyobraźnią
Let's use our imagination and our thoughts
wczesne lata 30.
to get to the early 1930s, to Berlin.
Znajdujemy się
We find ourselves
w centrum Berlina.
in the center of Berlin.
Bayerische Viertel, bawarskie.
Bayerische Viertel, the Bavarian district, is the name of that district. It's just 3 stops away from the Tiergarten.
Jest
the zoo.
tam dzisiaj stacja metra.
There is a station of the metro there. There is Barishev Park.
I oto jednego dnia
And one day,
w latach 30.
in those early
na
1930s,
ławkach pojawia się przed ławkami pojawia się napis.
you can read
Żydom nie
an
wolno
inscription on the
siadać
benches. Jews must not sit on these benches. You could say, it's unpleasant, it's not fair, it's not right. But after all, there are so many benches around.
No, można
You can sit somewhere else. Of course you can.
Pojawia się w tejże dzielnicy,
In
była to dzielnica
that district, and that was a district that was inhabited by intellectuals, by the intelligentsia, German, of Jewish origin. Albert Einstein used to live there. Nelly Sachs, the Nobel Prize winner, a politician and industrialist, Walter Rathenau, who was Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Jest tam basen pływacki, pływalnia.
There was a swimming pool.
Żydom zabroniony wstęp do tej pływalni.
Over its door, an inscription read, Jews are forbidden to enter. You could say, well, pleasant this is not, but there are so many places in Berlin where you can take a bath or swim, so many lakes, canals, it's nearly like Venice.
Pojawia się
At the same time,
napis Żydom
you can read somewhere else, Jews must not belong to German singing associations. So what? All right, they want to sing, they want to make music.
nie będą śpiewali.
Let them just meet somewhere else, they will do their singing. All right.
Napis
What comes up later
rozkaz.
is an order, really, more of an order than of an inscription. Non-Aryan children must not play with Aryan children, with the German children. All right, they'll play on their own. And then you read,
Żydom sprzedajemy chleb i produkty żywnościowe
we
tylko po
only
godzinie.
sell bread and food to Jews after 5 p.m. Right? Less choice. This makes your life harder. But after all,
Robi zakupy.
after 5 p.m. you can still do your shopping.
Uwaga, uwaga.
Now, I warn you, I'm getting used to a thought that thought that someone may be excluded becomes mediated into our lives. The thought that somebody can be stigmatized, that someone may be alienated. And that's how it is done, step by step, slowly. People begin to see that this is something normal. Both victims and the perpetrators, the witnesses, those whom we in English call bystanders, those who see it become familiar, and they become acquainted with that thought, familiar with the idea that the minority that produced Einstein, Nelly Sachs, Henry Heine, Mendelssohns, and many Nobelists, that it is different, that it can be pushed beyond the margin of the society, that they are different people, that they are alien people, that they are the people that carry germs, that cause pandemics. And this now is a horror. That's dangerous. This is where what may happen soon takes its origin. And let me tell you, if you consider that, and if we remember the words of Mr. President, power that at that time ran sly policy. For example, they met all the claims of workers. The 1st of May was never celebrated. All right, they gave you a day that was free from work. They introduced Kraft durch heute, so a special holiday for workers. They could also fight unemployment. They knew how to play on the dignity of a nation. Germans move up from the shame of Treaty of Versailles. Have your pride back. And that government also saw that people were slowly engulfed by this lack of sensitivity. They ceased to react to evil. And that was the moment when that government could speed up the process of evil. What came later was something that developed immediately. Jews could not get jobs, they could not emigrate, and then, quickly, Jews would be sent to ghettos, to Kaunas, to Riga, to my ghetto, the Litzmannstadt, the Łódź ghetto. Most people from there were later sent to Kulmhof, Chełmno on the Ner, where they were murdered in lorries with exhaust gases, and the rest will make their way to Auschwitz, where in a very modern way and manner they were murdered with Zyklon B in all those modern gas chambers. And here you see how the words of the President come true. Auschwitz did not fall suddenly from the skies. It was pittering-pattering in all those tiny steps. It was approaching until what happened here behind me did happen. My daughter, my granddaughter, peers of my daughter, peers of my granddaughter,
nazwiska
You do not have to know the name of Primo Levi. Primo Levi was one of the most famous inmates of this camp. Primo Levi
użył kiedyś takiego
once used that phrase.
To się wydarzyło,
This happened,
to znaczy, że się może wydarzyć,
which means that it may happen again,
wydarzyć wszędzie.
which means that it may happen anywhere in this world.
Podzieli się z nami jednym osobistym wspomnieniem.
May I share one personal memory with you? In 1965,
Na stypendium w Stanach Zjednoczonych
I went for a scholarship to the US, to America,
szczyt batalii
and that was the
prawa ludzkie, o prawa
peak, the acme of that battle for human rights,
ludności
for
afroamerykańskiej.
civil rights, for the Afro-Americans.
Brałem udział
It was my honor to participate in a march with Martin Luther King from Selma to Montgomery. And then people who learned that I had been an inmate of Auschwitz would ask me, how do you think?
Tylko w Niemczech coś takiego mogło być?
Must have been only in
Czy
Germany,
mogłoby być gdzieś indziej?
or do you think it could happen somewhere else?
Może być u
And then I
was.
told them,
U was
it can
może być.
also happen in
Jeżeli
your
się
country,
łamie
in this
prawa
land,
obywatelskie.
when the civil rights are broken,
Mniejszości.
when
Jeżeli się ich
people
likwiduje.
do not obey the laws of minorities, when you do away with the rights of minorities,
Jeżeli nagina się prawo, tak jak
if
to
you
przyjął
bend
Selmie,
law,
wtedy
as it
się
was done
może
in
stać.
Selma, this
Co
may
zrobić?
come to be.
Jedyne wyjście.
What to do?
Mówię mi.
There
Jeżeli
is
chcecie
only
się
one way
obronić
out,
waszą
only you.
konstytucję,
If you are
obronić
capable
wasze
of
prawa,
defending your
obronić
constitution,
wasz porządek,
defending your
obronić
laws
wasz
and your
porządek,
rights,
który
your
polega
democratic
na tym,
order,
żeby chronić
which
prawa
is
mniejszości,
based on the
wtedy
protection of minority rights,
to pokonać.
only then will you be able to conquer all that evil.
Moi drodzy,
My dear,
my w Europie
here in Europe,
w większości
most of us
wywodzimy się
hail from the tradition
chrześcijańskiej.
called Judeo-Christian.
Pewno ludzie wierzący,
Both
ale i
the
niewierzący,
believers but also the non-believers
jako swój
assume as their civilizational
canon
canon
przykazań.
the Ten Commandments.
Mój przyjaciel, najbliższy przyjaciel,
My friend, my closest friend,
Międzynarodowego Komitetu
the president
Oświęcimskiego,
of the International Auschwitz
który niestety
Committee,
tu przemawiał
Roman
tu,
Kent,
w tym miejscu
who
5 lat temu,
spoke here 5 years ago
poprzedniego jubileuszu.
during the
Nie mógł dzisiaj
previous
przyjechać,
jubilee. He
przylecieć,
couldn't arrive
wysłał
today, he couldn't fly in today. He's frail, he's been sick lately.
11 przykazanie.
But he invented the 11th commandment. The 11th commandment
Doświadczeniem
that
Shoah,
is an
doświadczeniem
experience of the Shoah, of the Holocaust,
tej strasznej
which is the
epoki
experience
pogardy.
of that horrible time of disdain.
11 przykazanie.
And
Nie
that
bądź
11th
obojętny.
is be not indifferent. Thou shalt not be indifferent.
I to chciałbym powiedzieć.
And this is what I would like to
mojej
tell
córce.
you,
To chciałem powiedzieć.
my daughter,
moim wnukom. To chciałbym powiedzieć.
my grandchildren.
rówieśnikom.
I'd like to tell it to the peers of my daughter, my grandchildren, wherever they live, be it Poland, be it Israel, be it America, be it Western Europe,
Tak, w Europie
the Eastern Europe. Yes, precisely, the Eastern Europe. It is very important here. Do not be indifferent when you see lies, historical lies. Do not be indifferent
Nie bądźcie obojętni, kiedy
Do not be
widzicie,
indifferent
że przeszłość
when you see that the past
naciągana do aktualnych
is stretched to fit the current political needs. Do not be indifferent when any minority
jest dyskryminowana.
is discriminated, because the essence of democracy is that majority governs, but democracy hinges on the rights of minorities being protected, and they have to be protected. At the same time,
Nie bądźcie obojętni,
do not be indifferent
jakakolwiek
when
władza
any
narusza
power or
przyjęte
government
umowy społeczne.
infringes all the social compacts that are there, that are already extant.
11
And
przykazanie.
keep the
Nie
commandments.
bądź obojętny.
11, thou shalt not be
To się
indifferent.
nawet nie obejrzycie,
Because if you are, you won't even notice when your heirs
Auschwitz nagle spadnie
will
z nieba.
suddenly see an Auschwitz falling down, dropping down from the skies straight on them.